The forgotten colony had once been full of dreams when the first families arrived many years ago. They came with hopeful eyes, believing that the stars held a better future for them. The land they chose was quiet and wide, with soft soil and long fields that seemed perfect for growing food. In the early days, the colony was full of energy. The settlers worked side by side, built homes from local stone, and planted seeds they carried across light years. They waited for support from their homeworld, which had promised to help them grow until they were strong enough to live on their own. But as time passed, the promises slowly faded. First, the transport ships stopped coming as often as before. Then the messages from the homeworld became short and rare. The colony elders tried to stay calm and convince everyone that help was still coming. They told the people that delays were normal and nothing to worry about. But deep inside, they felt uneasy because the silence from the homeworld felt heavier each day. The first signs of real trouble started when one of the oldest communication towers broke down during a storm. A strong wind bent the main beam, and lightning struck the side panel. The engineers in the colony tried to fix it, but they did not have the parts they needed. They sent a request to the homeworld, asking for spare parts and guidance. Weeks passed, and no reply came. The remaining towers worked harder, but they were old and not built for long-term use. Soon, one by one, they started to fail. The colony slowly lost its voice among the stars. People gathered at night, looking up at the sky, wondering if anyone still remembered them. Food became a growing concern. The crops that once grew easily started to fail after a harsh season of winds that carried dry dust across the fields. The colony tried new methods, shifted their planting spots, and even built simple shelters to protect the young plants, but nothing worked well. They had counted on supply ships to help during such times, but without them, the people had to ration. Meals became smaller, simple soups replaced rich dishes, and the children learned to live with less. Still, the colony tried to stay strong and hopeful. Illness came next. It was nothing violent, but it was painful and slow. A strange sickness spread through the settlement, making people weak and tired for days. The old and the young suffered the most. The small clinic the colony had built long ago was not enough to treat everyone, and the medical supplies were running low. The healers worked day and night, doing everything they could with the little they had. They sent urgent messages into space, hoping someone would hear them, but the silence continued not at this point. The elders gathered everyone in the central square. The air was cold. People wrapped thin cloths around themselves and waited for news. The elders looked tired, as if they carried the weight of the whole world on their shoulders. The oldest among them spoke in a calm, heavy voice. He told them what many had feared, that it seemed every race and every government that once promised to protect them had forgotten them. The words hit the crowd like a quiet storm. Some cried silently, while others simply looked down at the ground. No one shouted or argued. They were too tired for anger. Still, the elder said they would not stop trying. They had one old transmitter left, an old piece of equipment they had kept in the storage room because it barely worked. But they would try to use it one last time. They would send a single message far into space, not because they believed help would come, but because they wanted the universe to remember that they had tried to survive. The whole colony helped with the transmitter. They cleaned the dust, checked the wires, and connected it to the last working power source. When it flickered to life, everyone gathered nearby. Even the children stood quietly, sensing the importance of the moment. The elder stepped forward and spoke gently into the microphone. The message was simple. He said their colony was still alive, still fighting, but barely holding on. He said they had been abandoned, but they wanted anyone, to know that they once existed. It was not a plea for rescue, just a whisper into the void. The transmitter crackled and buzzed. The signal was weak and broken, but it went out into the dark sky. When the message finished, the elder turned off the microphone, but left the transmitter running. People watched the small blinking lights for a long time, almost hoping to see a reply. Hours passed. Nothing changed. Finally, the power was turned off to save energy. Life returned to slow routines. People repaired roofs, cleaned tools, and tried to grow whatever plants could survive. Parents tried to keep their children calm, telling them stories and singing soft songs at night. The colony became quiet, like a place waiting for something that would probably never come. Many days went by like this. Some mornings, the elders would check the old communication tower one last time, hoping for a sign, but it stayed silent. They began to accept that they were alone, but even in sadness, the colony never turned cold inside. People still shared food when they could. They helped each other repair broken doors or carry heavy buckets of water. The children still played simple games with stones because they had no toys left. Families gathered together during the long evenings and told each other stories of better times. Hope was still alive, not loud or bright, but quiet like a candle flame that refused to die. One night, as the sky turned deep blue and the stars flickered over the empty plains, the elder stood outside his small home. He looked up with tired eyes and whispered a simple hope. He wished that somewhere out in the stars, someone might hear their message, even if it was years from now. He wished that they would not be forgotten. Then he went back inside because the wind was cold and the night had become too quiet. The colony slept peacefully that night, unaware that far beyond their sky, the faint signal from their old transmitter was traveling slowly through space. It drifted past dead satellites, silent stations, and old routes no longer used. It carried their story, weak and broken, but still alive. No one in the colony knew it yet. But the moment they sent that message, their fate had already begun to change. Somewhere far away, a distant listening station would soon pick up the tiny signal. Someone would hear it, and for the first time in many years, someone would listen. The forgotten colony was not truly forgotten. Not any more. Far away from the forgotten colony, in a quiet corner of human space, a small listening station floated alone near the edge of known star routes. The station was not famous or important. It was old, with metal panels that had lost their shine, and long corridors that echoed when someone walked through them. Most of the time, it received nothing but empty background noise from the vast universe. Days were calm, slow, and peaceful. The team working there followed simple routines, checked equipment, and made sure the systems were running, even when nothing interesting happened. One evening, a young technician sat in front of a large screen filled with soft lines and patterns. The sound of the machines filled the room with a quiet hum. He sipped warm tea and looked at the readings the way he did every day. But suddenly, something small and unusual flickered across the screen. It was tiny and weak, almost too faint to notice. At first, the technician thought it was a glitch or interference from cosmic dust. He adjusted the settings, expecting the flicker to disappear, but instead the signal grew a little clearer. It was still broken and unclear, but it did not look random. He leaned closer and listened. The signal came in pieces, as if someone far away was trying to speak through a storm. His heart started to beat a little faster. He had listened to thousands of signals in his time at the station, but this one felt different. He immediately called the senior officer on duty. When the officer arrived, he looked at the screen with tired eyes and frowned slightly. The technician replayed the signal, and for a moment, the room fell quiet. There was a cracked, distant voice inside the message. It sounded old, full of exhaustion and sadness. The officer straightened up, now fully awake. They tried to clean the audio, and soon a few words came through. They were not human words, which made the discovery even more surprising. The officer sent a report to Human Command, including the audio clip. Hours later, a small team gathered in a meeting room to discuss what they heard. A few believed it was just an ancient signal bouncing around space, something sent years ago that had finally reached human territory. Others argued that the message needed to be checked because no one could ignore voices crying for help. One person in the room said something that stayed with everyone. "If someone is still alive out there, we cannot pretend we did not hear them." A few commanders hesitated. Sending help to an unknown location required resources, time, and risk. The galaxy was already full of political tension, and humans were still new to many parts of it. But humans also had a long history of answering calls for help, even if they did not fully understand who needed them. Their reputation for compassion had spread across several star systems. Finally, the decision was made. A humanitarian fleet, small but capable, would be sent to investigate the source of the signal. It was not a war mission, not a trade mission, but something simpler and more important. A mission to check if someone needed help. The fleet prepared quietly. Engineers checked every part of the ships. Medical teams loaded supplies, water, food, and equipment. Pilots looked over flight maps and made sure they understood the star route. There was a sense of purpose in the air, a quiet determination. People moved with focus, knowing that even if the signal was old or broken, they had a duty to try. The leader of the mission stood on the bridge of the main ship and thought about the weak voice they had heard. The message was simple, but the emotion inside, it was strong. It did not ask for riches or power. It only asked for someone to listen. Before departure, the team gathered for a short briefing. The leader spoke in a calm voice and reminded everyone why they were going. He said they were not doing this for politics or recognition. They were doing it because humanity believed that no one should be left alone if help was possible. Everyone nodded quietly. They understood. Then the fleet began its journey. The engines lit up with soft blue light, and the ships slowly moved away from the station. They passed through calm star fields, crossed old trade routes, and entered regions that few humans had traveled before. The journey took several days. During this time, the crew listened again and again to the weak message. Every time, they found new small sounds hidden in the static, tired voices. Faint echoes and a sense of loneliness that was hard to ignore. The deeper they traveled, the clearer it became that the message came from a place very far from any major star system. It was a forgotten corner of space that most races no longer visited. The navigation officer checked the coordinates and found almost nothing recorded in the database. No active stations, no recent travel logs, nothing that showed anyone had been there for years. As they approached the final location, the crew became quiet. They did not know what they would find. Some wondered if the colony was already gone. Others hoped they were not too late. The leader stood at the front window, watching the stars drift by, thinking about the people who might be waiting without knowing that help was coming. When the fleet finally arrived near the planet, they scanned the surface. The readings were faint, but clear enough to show life signs. The crew exchanged looks of relief. Someone was alive down there. The leader gave the order to move closer. The planet looked dry and worn from space. The fields around the settlement were brown and cracked. The buildings looked damaged. There were no signs of advanced technology in use. It was clear the colony had struggled for a long time. As the fleet descended, the people on the surface noticed the approaching ships. At first, they froze in fear. Many of them believed another race had come to ignore them or take advantage of their weakness. They gathered together with worried faces, unsure of what was about to happen. But when the human ships landed, something happened that the colony had not expected. The doors opened, and humans walked out carrying crates filled with food, water, tools, and medical supplies. There were no weapons in their hands, no demands, no orders. Only calm faces and open gestures. A few colonists stepped forward slowly. They looked weak, tired, and unsure if they could trust these strangers. The humans spoke gently, using simple words and friendly tones. A translator device helped bridge the language gap. One of the humans knelt down to check a sick child, offering a clean blanket and a warm drink. Another began fixing a broken water filter with tools they had brought. The colony watched in silence as the humans worked. They had not seen kindness like this in many years. Slowly their fear faded, replaced with a small spark of hope. For the first time in a long time, someone had come for them. And the humans had arrived not as rulers, not as conquerors, but as helpers. The lost colony, which once believed no one would ever hear their message, saw a new future begin the moment humanity stepped onto their land. The words spoken far away had been true. Humanity refused to leave anyone behind. Not now, and not on their time. The humans had landed on the colony's warm planet, and their presence immediately changed the air. The first moments were quiet and tense. The colony's people watched cautiously from a distance, unsure if these strangers would help or ignore them. Their lives had been full of disappointment for many years. Each day had taught them that promises from other races meant little when danger or need arrived. But the humans moved slowly, carefully, and without any aggressive signs. They carried crates of food, water, and medicine, and tools that glinted in the sun. Even the children, curious and scared, peeked from behind broken walls and old fences. The humans began their work immediately. Teams split into small groups, each focusing on a problem they could solve quickly. One group started repairing damaged water tanks. They inspected the pipes, cleaned rust, and replaced broken sections with materials they brought along. The colony's people watched closely, slowly realizing that these strangers were not like the others. They worked efficiently, but also gently, never taking control or forcing anyone to step aside. It was the first time in many years that someone treated them as equals, rather than tools or problems to be ignored. Another human team moved toward the buildings. Roofs had holes, walls were cracked, and windows had shattered long ago. The humans began repairing shelters, patching holes with the materials they carried, and cleaning debris that had piled up over years. They encouraged the colonists to help, offering guidance without rushing or scolding. Soon, small groups of villagers joined in, carrying wood, tools, and water. Some children offered their small hands to pass lightweight supplies. The act of working together created a sense of unity that had been missing for decades. The medical team moved quickly to the central clinic, where the colony's healers had worked tirelessly with limited resources. The humans opened their supplies and carefully assessed the patients. Children with fevers were given medicine, and adults with lingering sicknesses received care that had been impossible before. The healers from the colony watched in awe, learning new techniques and realizing that they could now help more people than they had dreamed. Even the oldest among them smiled faintly, feeling a relief they had not experienced in many years. The humans did not stop with the obvious needs. They began to check the communication towers, the last fragile connection the colony had to the outside universe. The tower wires were frayed, the antennas bent, and the power systems weak. Human engineers worked meticulously, tightening connections, replacing old circuits, and using portable energy converters to power the equipment. The colonists watched closely. For years, they had felt abandoned, but now they saw a new possibility. The universe might hear them again, and not only that, someone would be listening. Even in the midst of work, the humans made time to talk to the colony's people. They asked simple questions, listened to stories, and shared small jokes to ease tension. The colonists, who had grown wary of strangers, gradually opened up. They spoke of long winters, of lost loved ones, of children who had grown without friends outside the colony. The humans listened carefully, acknowledging their struggles without judgment. It was an interaction so rare and so gentle that many of the colonists found themselves smiling or even laughing for the first time in years. The children became especially attached to the humans. They followed them, watched their actions, and asked endless questions about the ships, the food, and the stars. The humans answered kindly, sometimes kneeling to be at eye level, or demonstrating with simple tools and games. The children began to trust them more than they had trusted anyone else, and the adults noticed this. It gave a quiet but powerful signal. These humans were here to stay, at least until help was properly established. Evening came, and the colony gathered for a shared meal. The humans helped prepare the food, combining supplies they had brought with what the colony could provide. They ate together under the wide open sky, sharing stories of faraway stars and human customs. The elders of the colony listened, amazed at the interest humans showed in their small world. No questions were dismissive, no comments were rushed. For the first time in a long while, the colony felt part of something larger than their isolated planet. Over the following days, the humans continued their work. They established small gardens using seeds and soil treatments that could survive the harsh climate. They repaired the simplest machines that had been long abandoned. They taught the colonists how to care for their water systems and small medical tools. Even the youngest children learned quickly, showing how adaptable and curious humans could be. The colonies slowly realized that they were not just being helped, but empowered. Skills they once lacked could now be learned. Tasks that had seemed impossible were now within reach. The colony started to dream again. They spoke quietly among themselves about rebuilding homes, about growing food that could last through storms, about restoring some of the buildings that had fallen into ruin. The humans encouraged these ideas, guiding without pushing. They asked the colonists what they wanted, and for the first time, the people felt their voices mattered. Some colonists were still cautious. They remembered past promises that had turned to nothing. But as each day passed, and the humans continued to work without complaint, the trust slowly grew. When one human fixed a water pipe that had not worked for years without expecting thanks, it spoke louder than words ever could. When a sick child was given medicine that brought warmth and energy back to their small body, hope returned with it. By the end of the first week, the colony had already begun to feel different. Water flowed more steadily, roofs were patched, and small gardens were planted. The humans did not force change, but guided it. They showed the colonists how to make small improvements that would last long after the humans left. Slowly, a rhythm returned to the settlement. Work, learning, and community replaced despair, fear, and silence. The human leaders gathered with the colony elders one evening. They discussed the history of the colony, how other races had abandoned them, and what could be done to help them thrive. The elders spoke honestly about the pain of being forgotten. The humans listened carefully and promised not only to help with immediate needs, but also to teach the colony to sustain itself. It was not a promise to control or rule, but a promise to ensure they could survive and grow independently. The colonists began to realize that they were witnessing something extraordinary. They had believed the universe was indifferent to their struggles. Now, they saw that at least one species would not abandon them, no matter how distant or inconvenient their lives might be. The humans showed that kindness, action, and patience could rebuild more than just homes. They could rebuild hope itself. Even the nights became lighter in spirit. People shared songs and stories with the humans, creating connections that bridged years of isolation. Children laughed as they learned games from the humans, and the adults found companionship in small conversations they had almost forgotten how to have. The settlement, once quiet and fearful, now hummed with quiet life and renewed energy. By the end of their first month, The humans had achieved what many thought impossible. The colony was still small and fragile, but it was alive in a new way. People moved with purpose, worked with confidence, and spoke of the future in a way they had not done in years. The humans had not just brought supplies. They had brought belief in a world that still cared, a world that would not leave them behind. The colonists had begun to see that even when every other race had turned away, humanity would stand and say, "Not on our time." The humans stayed on the colony's planet for several weeks, not only to provide help, but also to understand the full story of what had happened. They spent time speaking with the elders, the adults, and even the children. Every conversation revealed more about how the colony had been abandoned. The elders told stories of years when supply ships had failed to arrive, of illnesses that could not be treated, and of dangerous storms that damaged homes and fields. The humans listened carefully, taking notes and asking gentle questions, never rushing or interrupting. They wanted to know the truth, to understand the full depth of what the colony had endured. The children, who had grown up without friends outside the colony, shared simple stories of play and imagination, of hiding in corners when the winds were too strong, and of making small toys from scraps. Their voices were shy at first, but as the humans smiled and showed genuine interest, they opened up more. The adults observed this quietly, surprised by how easy it was for the humans to connect with the youngest ones. Slowly, a bond of trust began to grow between the visitors and the colonists. One of the most important discoveries for the humans was how the colony had been treated by other races in the past. Many had promised protection, aid, and support, but when times became difficult, those promises had vanished. Supply ships stopped arriving, communications were ignored, and visits became rare until the colony was entirely alone. Some colonists remembered voices from other races that spoke of politics, convenience, or priorities that mattered more than lives. The humans were shocked, unable to believe that beings could treat others this way. They quietly agreed among themselves that this abandonment was wrong and that it could not continue. While the humans learned the colony's story, they also continued to work. Engineers repaired older machines, fixed broken power lines, and rebuilt sections of walls and shelters that had been damaged for decades. They introduced new systems that would make water distribution easier and taught colonists how to maintain them. Each repair was accompanied by explanation and training, so the colonists could eventually handle problems on their own. Nothing was done secretly or without consent. The humans wanted to make sure that the colony would be independent, not dependent on outsiders. The medical team continued their work, checking every patient and ensuring that long-term issues were addressed. They taught the colony's healers new techniques and shared knowledge about medicines, hygiene, and nutrition. For the first time in many years, the sick and elderly had proper care. The children grew stronger, and parents watched with relief as small fevers and weakness disappeared. The colonists had learned to survive with little, but the humans showed them that survival could be easier, healthier, and even joyful. Even in small ways, the humans made life on the planet feel more normal. They introduced routines and practices that improved daily life. Children were taught simple exercises to stay healthy. Families were guided to create small gardens for consistent food, and the community learned ways to collect and store water efficiently. All of these efforts were done slowly and patiently, so that the colonists could adapt without feeling overwhelmed. The humans understood that change needed time and respect. One evening, the human leader invited the elders to a small meeting. They discussed the wider galaxy, how politics had allowed the colony to be ignored, and how future aid could be secured. The elders explained what they had feared most, that even if help arrived now, the larger empires might still see them as unimportant. The humans reassured them, saying that they would not allow the colony to be forgotten again. They promised to stay until the colony could defend itself and communicate with the rest of the galaxy on its own terms. It was not a promise of control, but of support and protection. The humans also worked on the communication systems. The old towers were rebuilt, new antennas were installed, and energy converters ensured constant power. Soon, the colony could send and receive messages reliably. This was more than technology. It was hope. For the first time in decades, the colony felt they could reach out to the universe, not with fear, but with confidence. They could tell their story, ask for help if needed, and reconnect with distant friends or allies. Humanity had not just arrived with tools. They had brought connection and a voice. As the colony began to recover, the humans noticed how much trust and cooperation had grown. Children were laughing and learning together. Adults shared knowledge and skills, and even the elders began to smile more often. The humans did not just provide supplies. They provided a sense of stability and respect. They showed the colony that help did not have to come with conditions or demands, only with care and guidance. Slowly, the community began to feel alive again. In the evenings, humans and colonists would gather to share stories. The elders told about the past, the struggles, and the days of hope and despair. Humans shared tales of distant stars, space travel, and the values of humanity. The children listened wide-eyed, learning that there was a bigger universe and that humans could be trusted allies. These moments were not just entertainment. They were lessons in trust, empathy, and shared purpose. Even the smallest details mattered. The humans repaired playgrounds where children could safely play, fixed wells so water could be accessed easily, and repaired simple transport vehicles so that goods could move around the settlement. Every action reinforced the message. The colony mattered, their lives mattered, and they would not be ignored again. Each success, no matter how small, brought smiles, laughter, and a quiet sense of pride back to the colony. One day, while walking among the restored fields, the leader of the human team spoke with the elders about the future. He asked what the colony hoped for, not just in survival, but in life and growth. The elders spoke cautiously, still wary from years of abandonment, but they described dreams. Children growing up healthy, families thriving, and the colony becoming a place others could visit and learn from. The humans listened and made notes, promising to help in ways that respected the colony's culture and wishes. It was not an imposition of ideas, but a collaboration. Over the following weeks, the humans continued to train the colonists in maintaining their technology, in caring for the sick, and in growing food efficiently. They emphasized self-reliance so that when humans eventually left, the colony would remain strong. Colonists began to take charge, leading small projects, teaching others what they had learned, and rediscovering confidence that had been lost for years. Even the children were involved, learning and applying new skills with excitement and pride. By the end of their stay, the humans had done more than repair buildings and fix machines. They had restored hope, taught skills for survival, and created a renewed sense of community. The colony was no longer a place of fear and isolation, but a growing society, capable of sustaining itself and communicating with the universe. Humanity had shown them that care, patience, and action could overcome decades of neglect and abandonment. As the humans prepared to leave, the colony gathered to say goodbye. Children waved, adults nodded, and elders expressed heartfelt thanks. The humans promised that this was not the end. They had opened a door to the wider galaxy, given the colony the tools to survive, and ensured that no one would forget them again. As the ships lifted off, the colonists looked up with new hope. For the first time, they truly believed that help could come, that someone would listen, and that they were not alone in the universe. Humanity had kept a promise that others had broken, and the colony would never forget it. News of the human mission reached the wider galaxy faster than anyone had expected. Reports of the forgotten colony, long thought lost and abandoned by other races, were now circulating. Some governments and empires reacted with shock and shame. They had known about the colony's plight, but had turned away when it was convenient. Many diplomats gathered to discuss how humans had taken action, questioning motives and intentions. Some argued that humanity had interfered where they should not, while others admitted quietly that no one had done anything for the colony for far too long. The debates were heated, but the humans focused on the colony itself, not the politics surrounding it. Meanwhile, on the planet, the human teams continued their work. They did not leave until the colony was fully supported and capable of handling its own needs. Engineers continued to train locals on maintenance of water systems, energy grids, and communication devices. Medical teams educated the colony's healers, ensuring that treatments could continue independently. Every lesson was designed to leave the colonists with the knowledge and confidence to manage without constant external support. The colonists absorbed the teachings, sometimes surprised by their own ability to learn and adapt so quickly. The children, who had once lived in isolation and fear, now had access to education and guidance. Humans taught basic sciences, mathematics, and practical skills that could help the colony thrive. The children's laughter and curiosity filled the air, and adults noticed the change with amazement. This was not just about survival anymore. It was about growth, potential, and the chance to dream again. The humans encouraged questions, curiosity, and creativity, showing that knowledge could be empowering and uplifting. During this time, a few representatives from the original alien empires finally decided to visit. They had heard about the human mission and were curious, if not slightly embarrassed, by what had been accomplished. When they arrived, they found a colony that had been transformed. Homes were repaired, water and power flowed steadily, and gardens provided food. The children played safely, and the adults moved with confidence and purpose. The aliens were shocked. Their empires had long considered the colony lost, yet here it was, thriving because humans had chosen to intervene where they had not. The humans greeted the visitors calmly. They explained the work done, the lessons taught, and the care provided. They also made it clear that this was not about control, politics, or reward. It was about doing the right thing. The humans showed that compassion and action could make a real difference, even in situations where other races had abandoned responsibility. The alien representatives listened quietly, some shifting uncomfortably as they realized how long they had ignored the colony. The contrast was stark. Human action versus the inaction of empires that had once claimed responsibility. The humans continued to work with the colony, strengthening communication systems and ensuring that contact with the wider galaxy was secure and reliable. They taught the colonists how to send messages, request aid if necessary, and manage their own technology. The goal was clear: independence. Humanity did not seek control or influence. They wanted to ensure that the colony could survive and thrive on its own terms. It was a demonstration of trust and respect that the colonists had not experienced before. While the political debates continued elsewhere, the colony's people focused on their daily lives. They worked, learned, and cared for one another. The children explored, played, and learned new things. Adults managed gardens, repaired homes, and trained under human guidance. Even the elders, who had carried the burden of isolation for years, began to smile more, seeing a future that had once seemed impossible. The humans encouraged them, offered advice, and celebrated small victories with the community. One day, a gathering was held to discuss the colony's future. Humans, colonists, and visiting alien representatives all participated. The colonists spoke clearly about what they wanted: a self-governed community, access to education and medicine, and the ability to maintain contact with the galaxy. They did not want control or interference, They wanted the tools and knowledge to ensure survival and growth. The humans affirmed their support, promising guidance and help when needed, but leaving decisions to the colony. This meeting marked a turning point. The colony had regained a voice and a place in the universe, and humanity had proven that action and care could overcome neglect. The children performed small demonstrations of what they had learned, planting, building, and using basic tools. The adults showed how they could repair water systems and manage gardens. Even the elders shared stories and practical wisdom. The visitors were impressed, but the humans smiled quietly, knowing that the true achievement was not the demonstrations, but the empowerment of an entire community. The colony was no longer a forgotten place. It was a living, learning, and thriving society. As the human teams prepared to leave, there was a sense of completion, but also humility. They had not done everything, and the work of the colony would continue long after they were gone. Their role had been to guide, teach, and restore hope. The colonists expressed gratitude in ways both simple and profound. Children waved, adults embraced, and elders shared heartfelt words of thanks. But the humans reminded everyone that the real reward was seeing the colony capable, confident, and ready to face the universe on its own. In the final hours, the humans gathered to ensure that all systems were operational. They checked communication towers, water supplies, and energy grids one last time. Everything functioned, and the colony had the knowledge to maintain it. They left behind manuals, instructions, and tools, emphasizing that independence was the ultimate goal. As the ships prepared to lift off, the colony watched, not with fear, but with hope and pride. Humanity had not only intervened, they had restored belief that someone would act when others had abandoned responsibility. As the fleet departed, a quiet calm spread over the planet. The colonists returned to their homes, gardens, and workshops, now with confidence that help could come when needed, but also with the ability to care for themselves. The children ran freely, laughter filling the air, and adults moved with purpose, guided by knowledge and experience shared by the humans. Even the elders, once weary and defeated, held a quiet optimism. They understood that while the galaxy could sometimes be indifferent, there were those who would act with compassion and integrity. The wider galaxy had watched humanity's actions closely. Some nations quietly acknowledged that humans had shown the right way to respond to suffering. Others debated policies and responsibilities, realizing that neglect had consequences. The humans did not boast or interfere. They had acted because it was the right thing to do. And in doing so, they had set an example that even when others abandoned responsibility, action, care, and respect could change the fate of an entire world. The colony, once forgotten and abandoned, now had a future. With knowledge, tools, and confidence, they were prepared to survive, grow, and thrive. They had learned that even in the darkest moments, help could come, and that some beings would act with integrity, patience, and kindness. Humanity had not only saved lives, they had restored hope, dignity, and the belief that no one would ever truly be forgotten if others chose to act. The colony would remember this forever. The lesson was clear. When everyone else walks away, there will always be those who stand and say, "Not on our time." Months had passed since the humans had first arrived on the forgotten colony. Life on the planet had changed dramatically, yet the bond between humans and colonists had remained strong. The humans continued to guide from a distance, checking in through the communication systems they had helped establish, while the colonists applied what they had learned. They managed their water systems, maintained energy grids, and took care of the gardens and fields that now provided more than enough food. Each day was filled with work, learning, and small achievements, all contributing to a stronger, more confident community. The children thrived. They moved through the settlement with curiosity and energy, asking questions, exploring repaired buildings, and tending small gardens. Their laughter echoed across the fields, a sound that had been absent for many years. The adults watched with pride, realizing that the youngest generation now had the opportunity to grow up healthy, educated, and hopeful. For the first time, the colony had the chance to imagine a future, not just survive the present. The elders, who had once carried the weight of isolation and despair, now found themselves teaching and guiding with renewed strength. They shared wisdom with the young, telling stories of survival, courage, and perseverance. The humans had encouraged the elders to lead and make decisions, ensuring that the colony maintained its culture and traditions even as it modernized. This balance of past and present gave the colony a sense of identity and continuity that had been missing for decades. As the colony stabilized, the humans focused on connecting it with the wider galaxy. They assisted in establishing secure communication links so that messages could be sent and received reliably. The colonists learned to manage these systems themselves, sending routine updates, requests for knowledge, and even greetings to nearby worlds. This connection brought the colony a sense of belonging. They were no longer isolated, but part of a larger network of civilizations. The universe felt closer, less indifferent, and more welcoming. Over time, other alien representatives visited the planet, curious to see the changes. They found a thriving community that had been abandoned for generations, now capable, educated, and confident. Many were surprised, and even ashamed of how they had ignored the colony in the past. Humans welcomed these visitors calmly, showing that their actions had been about care and integrity, not politics. They demonstrated how communities could grow when helped, empowered, and respected, rather than controlled or ignored. The colonists themselves had become active participants in their own development. Adults led projects to improve housing, irrigation, and energy systems. They taught each other skills they had learned from humans, creating small workshops and learning groups. The community began to operate independently, though always remembering the guidance that had set them on this path. Self-reliance had become a point of pride, and the humans were proud to see the colony managing its own affairs successfully. Children and adults alike participated in cultural activities, blending traditions with new knowledge. Festivals, music, and art became regular parts of life again. The colony discovered that rebuilding was not just about repairing buildings or systems, but also about restoring joy, connection, and identity. Humans had shown them that survival was not enough. Life could be meaningful, shared, and celebrated. Medical care remained a priority. The colonists, trained by the humans, now managed health and wellness for the entire community. Clinics operated smoothly, children grew healthy, and the elderly received proper attention. Preventive care became part of daily routines, ensuring that sickness and disease were no longer constant threats. The humans had left behind knowledge, tools, and procedures that empowered the colony to maintain wellness independently. Education expanded rapidly. The children were no longer limited to basic survival skills. They learned about science, mathematics, and problem solving. Adults continued to participate, learning new techniques for farming, engineering, and technology. Knowledge sharing became a central part of community life. The humans had taught not just skills, but the value of learning itself, showing the colony that knowledge could be used to solve problems, innovate, and prepare for a brighter future. Over the months, the colony began to thrive in unexpected ways. Small industries developed, gardens produced surplus food, and repair shops managed tools and machinery efficiently. The community operated with coordination and purpose, guided by the lessons and principles humans had introduced. The colonists had developed confidence in themselves and their abilities. Realizing that they were capable of shaping their own destiny, the humans, watching from afar and through visits, encouraged this growth, but never took over. They reminded the colony that independence was the goal, not dependency. Every choice the colonists made was their own, and every success belonged to them. The humans had given tools, guidance, and support, but the colony had turned that help into sustainable growth, self-reliance, and resilience. One day, the colony gathered for a communal event to celebrate their progress. Children performed plays and demonstrations of what they had learned. Adults showcased engineering and agricultural projects. Elders shared stories of survival and resilience. Visitors from nearby systems attended and marveled at the community's transformation. It was a powerful moment that celebrated not just recovery, but the reclaiming of life, hope, and dignity. The humans who had first arrived returned briefly to witness the results. They observed quietly, without fanfare, as the colony demonstrated its growth. They watched children laugh freely, adults work confidently, and elders speak proudly. No words were needed. The transformation spoke for itself. The humans had acted, not for recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. And in doing so, they had changed the fate of an entire world. The colony now had a voice in the galaxy. It could communicate, trade knowledge, and form relationships independently. It had learned resilience, self-reliance, and the value of education and care. Humanity's intervention had proven that even when every other race had abandoned them, one species could stand firm and act with compassion. The lessons of trust, responsibility, and integrity became part of the colony's culture, ensuring that future generations would understand the value of helping others. In the quiet moments, when the children were asleep and adults were resting, the elders would look at the stars and reflect. They remembered the long years of abandonment, the struggle, the despair. But they also remembered the arrival of humans, the first aid, the lessons, and the steady care that restored their hope. They realized that humanity had not only saved their lives, they had changed the very way the colony saw the universe. They had learned that there could be beings who cared, who acted with integrity, and who refused to abandon others. As the final human ships left the planet, there was no sadness. The colony was strong, capable, and confident. It had the tools, the knowledge, and the belief that they could manage whatever came next. Children played freely, adults worked with purpose, and elders smiled with pride. The humans had come, acted, and left, but their presence remained in every repaired home, every working system, every taught lesson, and every hopeful heart. The colonists understood that their story had changed forever. Once forgotten, abandoned, and isolated, they were now empowered, connected, and respected. Humanity had shown them that even in a universe where neglect was common, care and action could make a lasting difference. The colony had survived, thrived, and reclaimed its place among the stars, knowing that when everyone else abandoned them, humanity had said, "Not on our time."